From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News, where random articles are thrown at me and I discuss the animal news of the day. So let's dive right in. From news.mongabay.com, beavers restored to tribal lands in California benefit ecosystems. Wonder where this is occurring because not all of California technically is habitable for beavers. Now, in some instances, there I think have been certain years where they covered the whole state, but in others, not so much. In 2023, California relocated beavers for the first time in more than 7 decades. Wow, really? They at least by what I've seen with other states, they're constantly being relocated. So this is strange. The state's wildlife agency partnered with Native American tribes to move beavers from places where they were causing problems, such as flooding, to parts of their former range. The moves and the state's broader beaver restoration program are the result of decades of advocacy to change an adversarial relationship to one focused on beaver conservation and the benefits beavers can provide, from increased fire resilience to more consistent water supplies. The change in mindset involved, okay, so let's keep going. So Chester, California, the pictograph in an Australian red outline with four paws and an unmistakable paddle of a tail has been on the reservation my whole life. It's just one of what, talking about a painting? I don't care about your painting. Um, Sometimes you need to just look at things more often. About a decade ago, a succession of drought years parched the land, and leaders were searching for ways to shore up the reservation's water. Okay. Oh, by the way, I think it's occurring in the Tool River. Okay, so let's see. So, Tool River tribe decided to find a way to bring them back. And I think it's just a cave painting of a beaver, and he has some problem with his face. Okay. Geesh, tell us what happened. Okay. Recently, though, things have started to turn. In 2023, the state began a beaver restoration program through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Most notably, the program partnered with the Tool River Tribe so it's like where the subspecies of Tool elk live. So this is probably over in somewhat northwestern California. Uh, north of San Francisco, as well as the Mountain Madu people in Northern California to move beavers to tribal lands from areas where, okay, primarily in the watersheds of the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers. It is interesting considering how, much California for decades has, thrown a fit when it comes to environmental issues. And all of a sudden there's a relocation for beavers, like for the first time in what it's saying 70 years. So this is strange. At the northern end of the Sierra Nevada, so this is Sierra Nevada mountain range is on the the eastern side of California. Reintroduced beavers now live in a meadow called now live in a meadow called that's the mountain Madu. Ah, okay. Uh, Sheesh. This is horrible. Uh, grammar. Got lost. Okay. How many did you reintroduce? You're not telling me. I oh, okay. So they're trapped in these boxes. Okay, so yeah, it's mm, oh wow, okay. They're being released right here. 7 beavers take to their new home at Tisam. Great. Finally. Oh, they're already in the water. Yeah. Some are just take a little longer than others. I'm guessing these are all of the same um group or pot of beavers. Okay, let's go to another one. Here I'll see. Now, you know what? We've seen them in the water. I'm glad they were. released into this area that I'm guessing has been devoid of beavers for a while. Hopefully, though, very quickly they come into contact with other beavers and we don't have any more genetic issues. Which I don't think seems to be a problem with beavers in North America, considering of how common they are. Um, but they should start. They're going to create that area into a big marsh.
Okay, this just looked interesting to me, and I didn't read it.
Okay. From discoverwildlife.com. Enormous piles of rotting seaweed mount up on Florida beaches, and they're snaring sea turtle hatchlings. Huh. Record amounts of sargassum seaweed washing up on the coast of Florida are making it harder for vulnerable sea turtle hatchlings to reach the ocean. Whoa. Geez, what is going on? Still haven't checked on that other thing occurring in Florida. I'm saying there's a bunch, but what is causing this issue? Record amounts of sargassum seaweed are washing ashore in Florida, adding a new and serious obstacle to sea turtle hatchlings as they make the perilous journey from their sandy nests to the Atlantic Ocean. The turtles' route from nest to sea is already fraught with hazards, including risk from predators, artificial lights, and beach debris. Yes, artificial lights, especially at night, depending on where the mother turtles are laying their eggs, can have a negative effect on the turtle hatchling's instinctive navigation route system. So let's see. The additional challenge of navigating piles of seaweed reduces their chances of survival even further, according to a new study published in the Journal of Coastal Research. Wow, that is immense. Huge piles of so that was this on Juno Beach in Florida. This was back in July of 2021. So is it still occurring?
I remembered it years ago in
Yeah.
Panama City where I would see occasionally a bunch of stuff just pile up.
Okay, so then this really isn't a new phenomenon. Uh I just haven't been focusing on this ecological
Well,
aspect.
I've never seen that much. I mean, that's a lot.
So, sargassum is a free floating yellow brown seaweed that forms mats on the ocean floor. It serves as an important resource in the marine world, providing food and a place to live for numerous sea animals. It's also a valuable source of nutrients for deep sea life. When sargassum loses its buoyancy, it sinks to the sea floor, providing energy in the form of carbon to fishes and invertebrates in the deep sea, thus serving as a potentially important addition to deep sea food webs. Wow, for once, they're actually complementing the carbon. However, in large quantities, this fast growing seaweed has a potential. I spoke too fast. This fast growing seaweed has a potential to cause problems, forming miles long mats that can smother coral beds, prevent fish from getting oxygen, and entangle marine animals. That's interesting. I haven't heard this with seaweed. Like, more familiar with this, like occurring with algae, but this is new. When it washes ashore, it can be a nuisance to beachgoers as it rots and starts to smell. That's the least of it. I mean, this is a big problem for the other animals. I guess you could say everybody, but sargassum is also becoming increasingly problematic for sea turtle hatchlings. Every animal is going to be negatively impacted by this, I would assume. Yet little research has been done on exactly how it impacts these vulnerable reptiles. I don't think you need a lot of research. They're having to, pile through there and
What
oh,
reptiles are they talking about?
turtles.
Turtles are reptiles?
Yeah.
Huh.
Sheesh. How far does he have to go? Hmm,
I do remember seeing the beaches a lot. Like, you would see it, but then it would be gone.
no, they're not doing it as much, or this is just much more than previously. Well, I hope Crush makes it, if that's a male. To find out more, researchers from Florida Atlantic University conducted an experiment on three beaches on the Florida coast: Juno Beach, Jupiter, and Boca Raton. On Boton? Raton. On each beach, they placed mats of sargassum up to 19 centimeters high on the sand to simulate natural crawlways. They then measured how long it took the leatherback, loggerhead, and green turtle hatchlings to reach the water. The results show that even low piles of seaweed, 7 to 9 centimeters thick, delayed hatchlings significantly, with some unable to climb the piles at all. I guess 7 to 9 centimeters in height. Not thick. Loggerheads found the obstacles particularly challenging. They slowed by 91% in the lightly spread sargassum and 175% in the deeper piles. So this is already been having probably a big negative impact on each of these generations of turtles. Though, I mean, since you're stating that it was occurring, much earlier on,
Well, I never saw it like this.
it was just like piles here and there.
I mean, it would go up on the beach and be in a line, but it wasn't 10 feet wide.
Hmm. So hatchlings of all species often flipped onto their backs during these climbs. Yeah, that's not good. Sometimes more than 20 times in a single trial. Wow. Okay. Well, I guess I forgot how resilient these hatchlings are, but that has to be exhausting. Leaving them exposed to predators and the sun for longer. Yeah, the sun's probably a bigger problem than the predators because each second the turtle's becoming drier. And there comes to a point where even the adults can suffer from
Well, it also
just being
depends on
roasted.
the time of day and the time of year. I mean,
Yeah.
if this is happening and all of a sudden it's 95 degrees outside and the sun's blaring down, now the seaweed, I would assume, keeps it cooler than if they were trying to crawl across hot sand.
It would be a much quicker, trip to, the water. The longer a hatchling stays on the beach, the more at risk it becomes, not just from predators like birds and crabs, but also from overheating and dehydration, especially after sunrise. And also if it's, darker seaweed, I would think, that would become hot at some point. Yeah, that's geesh, the waves aren't even reaching the height of, some of it. Gosh. Okay, mm. So the researchers also wanted to test how the seaweed impacted the turtle's energy levels. To do this, they measured the hatchling's blood glucose levels after completing the crawl. Interestingly, the results show that the turtle's glucose levels remained relatively stable after crawling through the seaweed, suggesting that the added obstacle didn't deplete their measurable energy stores as much as expected. Despite this, Melton warns that time is a critical factor. The slower hatchlings move, the greater the danger. When sargassum piles are higher, some can be over a meter high or 3.3 feet on South Florida beaches in the summer and extend for hundreds of meters down the beach. We can expect more failed attempts, particularly when hatchlings have to cross multiple bands of seaweed just to reach the ocean. Sheesh. I mean, to them, that's like a giant hill that they're having to get across. And they just have flippers. An abundance of sargassum seaweed can also reduce available nesting space and change incubation conditions. So this is has to do with how well insulated the mother turtle created her nest of eggs, adding further pressure to already vulnerable sea turtle populations. For sea turtle hatchlings, reaching the ocean is already a race against time and survival. Now, increasingly large mats of sargassum are adding new challenges to this critical journey. This study highlights the need for more responsive beach management. Without intervention, researchers warn this rising tide of seaweed could quietly undermine sea turtle conservation efforts for years to come. I would just simply say that it could cause the populations in these areas to go extinct quickly. Wow. Sheesh, that is huge. That's immense. Gosh. Okay. Well, I the turtles that do make it to the water, I really hope that they don't get eaten because when there's large amounts of them, it's like, okay, that's unfortunate. Some alligators or sharks got a handful or certain larger fish, but in this case, it's like, no, I really hope that they'll just make it to reproductive age. So let's move on to the Cowboy State Daily. Game warden busted illegal reptile dealers by taking Gila monsters to bar. Okay. A Wyoming man and retired federal game warden helped bust the bizarre 1970s heyday of America's illegal reptile trade by taking venomous Gila monsters to the bar. This includes a shady dealer who was bitten by one and drank tequila until he felt better. Wait a second. So did this happen in the 70s? Okay, so the 1970s heyday of the illegal reptile trade. Okay, so this is when like Burmese pythons were being released back in or into Florida, as well as like the iguanas, a wide variety of non-native reptiles to the region. Certain species of amphibians. Some came later though, like into the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Um, as well as like a wider range of different invasive species. Also, not just in North America, but in a lot of places. Some areas, like back in the 1800s and even early 1900s, you already had invasive species occurring. But okay, at one point during an undercover operation, he was with a suspect in a Subaru crammed full of sacks of snakes when the ties on one of the sacks became loose. I reached down beside me to get a snack, and I felt a snake. I thought to myself, gee, I hope that's one of the friendly ones. It wasn't. The slithering escapee turned out to be a coral snake, a venomous species. Well, they kind of have to chew on you slightly before they can truly inflict a lot of venom, but yeah, it's still best not to get bitten by it. We wound up spending quite a while with flashlights trying to find it and recapture it. Luckily, the episode ended with the snake back in the sack and nobody bitten. Eventually, Demenci made his case and the suspect was busted. From New Mexico to Utah, then Wyoming, Demenci started his career. Okay. Okay, what happened next? Okay, so when he started his career, there was a huge demand in Europe for American reptiles, such as rattlesnakes, great banded king snakes, and gill monsters. The best method of getting snakes was to drive the highways at night looking for snakes that slithered onto the asphalt to soak up the heat. There were a lot of folks out and about in those days looking for snakes. Some people would try to fake their competition out by tossing sections of garden hose striped with duct tape onto the highways. From a vehicle, they looked enough like king snakes to prompt some folks to stop.
This is funny.
Then the people who set out the fake snakes would pass you and get ahead of you, so they would have the first chance at the next real snake. Back then, a Gila monster could fetch $1,000 to $1,200 on the black market. Quite a hefty sum in 1970s dollars.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah, it is quite a bit. Dealers would snag as many as they could in the deserts of New Mexico and in neighboring Texas. The work was dangerous, and the fierce competition drove dealers to take risks. Demenci recalled one dealer was bitten by a Gila monster, and Gila monster venom is no joke. In 2024, Colorado man died after being bitten by his pet Gila monster. I've always found it shocking that people want to have them as pets. What are you going to do with a Gila monster? It's just supposed to be out there being a lazy, fat reptile under a rock during the middle of the day in like the deserts of New Mexico and West Texas. Sometimes I think even to like Arizona, southern Colorado, and Utah, and like waiting for a small rodent or another reptile or amphibian. I really never understand with most reptiles. I mean, um, you do see it like with certain snakes and how smart they can be. Like you have where these pythons can open certain doors, and if they're unlocked. But outside of that, I never understood the thing with having a reptile as a pet.
Wait, I'm confused. Are Gila monsters and Gila monsters the same thing?
I think so,
Th They're just pronounced people just pronounce it differently.
probably.
Mm.
Um, but the dealer who was bitten didn't even seek medical help. He sat and drank tequila until he felt better. The man was apparently lucky because while Gila monsters have nasty teeth, they're not particularly efficient at injecting their venom. Sounds kind of similar to, well, I don't know exactly how the Gila monster, um, what precise sort of bite it takes to inflict a certain amount of venom.
So it's like a coral snake.
Well, that's what I'm guessing. I'm not particularly sure. I mean, one's a snake and the other is a different type of lizard. Um, they have teeth, much like a large trout, and then glands to secrete the venom. Um, okay, so unless one really chews on you, you don't get much of a dose of the venom. Well, I think it depends on the size of the person too. Okay, so um okay, so during those pre-internet days, the best way to catch attention was to meet people in person. I'd walk into a bar with a Gila monster on my arm. The trick was he'd previously put the Gila monster into a cooler with a wet towel to slow the reptile's metabolism into a lethargic state. That raises the question, what was his safety window before the Gila monster got frisky again? About a beer and a half. As a federal warden in Utah, Da Vinci again worked undercover cases against black market wildlife dealers. Uh, okay, I'll be honest. Let's go to another one. It's just, um, so not much I can say about that. Okay, so moving forward from the Bangor Daily News. Why there are no dinosaur fossils in Maine? Um, yeah, it's just partially because Maine was, oh, nope, can't read it. Um, Underwater at certain points, and then you had it where there were glaciers covering the area, but, that was a major part is that it just was completely uninhabitable. Not even a lot of, sea creatures would end up there either. Oh, we have something here? Okay. So from NBCDFW.com, coyotes caught napping on patio furniture in Arlington. So is this in Texas? So Cecilia Clark is taking matters into her own hands after finding a pair of coyotes curled up in her backyard. The Arlington mom has turned to Amazon to help keep coyotes away from her home after finding two of them sleeping on her back patio furniture. Curled up and comfortable, the coyotes gave Clark a close encounter she says was enough. I was like, "Oh my god, those aren't dogs, those are coyotes because I've seen them before." Clark says she sees coyotes near her home and every day now. She has turned to Amazon for a possible solution: solar powered motion sensor pest repellents. It's automatic, so you see as we came this way, that little noise came. You'll notice it here too. She is also reinforcing her fence, where the animals could get too close to her 6-month-old baby boy. Well, also coyotes can dig under the fence as well. So, uh, though, I mean, if it's surrounded by concrete, then depending on how tall your fence is, they can also climb it. They're pretty. Just last year, coyotes bit 3 children at Parkway Central Park in North Arlington. That's funny. I imagine they're just looking for food or something because they're skinny, that is for sure. I can see why they're very hungry. Stein says he has seen coyotes in the area for more than 12 years. If this is where I think it is, adjacent to like Dallas and Fort Worth, yeah, they've been there for ever, like thousands of years. Um, the city of Arlington says it is not unusual for residents to spot coyotes, foxes, skunks, raccoons, and even feral hogs roaming their neighborhoods. Officials encourage residents to make their property less attractive to wildlife by securing trash and not leaving pet food outside. Okay. Um, um, I think there have been also even like cougar or mountain lion sightings occurring around Arlington. They're definitely over there. But yeah, this isn't surprising. Just coyotes make themselves comfortable in somebody's yard. Okay, so moving forward from the Columbus Dispatch or dispatch.com, acute outbreak of another deadly deer disease in Ohio has raised alarms. Customary, orderliness, if not matter of fact, calm ruled when whitetail season opened Saturday within a widening deer disease zone not far from Columbus. Farther from Columbus, a scent of death amid an acute outbreak of a separate deer disease has raised alarms. Hunters in the Ohio Division of Wildlife have had several years to accept the reality of fatal, unstoppable chronic wasting disease in the state deer herd. Fatal, that is, for deer that contact the brain wasting malady caused by a misshaped protein known as a prion. Okay, so No hunter or kin who has dined on the flesh of an infected deer has developed a human form of CWD. Nonetheless, health advisories are that tainted meat shouldn't be eaten. Okay, so unfortunately, infected deer generally are not identifiable until they reach the late stages. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing is when you tend to see the deer all of a sudden like walking in circles. Um, Tends to be quite skinny, but yeah, then eventually within a few days just dies. The disease is confirmed by laboratory testing of brain matter. To date, 73 wild deer in Ohio that have been tested showed evidence of CWD infection since 2020. I haven't done too much research into the chronic wasting disease occurring in whitetails. So, not a whole lot I can say here. I think these guys are healthy. The okay. Oh, that's it. So, yeah, I think chronic wasting disease has been occurring in what almost or at least a majority of the states now. Okay, from earth.com, see what we have. Finally, something was discovered. New species of mouse possum discovered that has a tail longer than its body. A peer-reviewed report that has documented a new animal species, a small marsupial found at 8,740 feet or 2,660 meters in the eastern Andes of Peru. So this is over in South America, probably adjacent to the country of Chile as well. Um, Probably not adjacent to where like the guanacos and the pumas and the who are those smaller camels? It's not hitting me. Probably not like adjacent to those ecosystems. Turns out this is not just a variant of something already known, but a new species in its own right. The animal is collected inside Rio Abacio National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The park protects cloud forests, high grasslands, and a trove of archaeological heritage. The new marsupial, Marmosa chacapoya, is a mouse possum and belongs to a group that is represented by many species across the Americas. The work was led by Sylvia E. Pevan. Okay, so discovering Marmosa chacapoya, her team documented the specimen's features and sequenced specific DNA regions to test whether they matched any named species. The holotype was captured in 2018 in an upper montane rainforest site within the park. Rather than rely on a glance and a hunch, the researchers paired careful measurements with genetic data to reach a clear conclusion. DNA barcoding is a method widely adopted since 2003. Okay, let's keep going. So, in this study, the scientists looked at a piece of DNA that codes for the protein cytochrome B, along with other parts of the animal's DNA. They then compared these genetic pieces to samples kept in museum collections. The results showed that the animal from Peru is related to Marmosa lepida and Marmosa andersoni. So, it appears that Marmosa, this specific genus of possum, has quite a variety of different species within the genus but is clearly a different species. The animal from Abacio is very different in its DNA, about 8% different from Marmosa lepida. Wow, that's quite a distinction. For small mammals, that much difference is considered a big gap and shows that this species has been separate for a long time. Species status does not rest on DNA alone. The researchers documented a long, narrow face and a tail that is longer than the head and body combined, which is typical for these agile climbers. The animal also had a remarkably narrow and long rostrum with a very long premaxillary process, absence of postorbital processes. The belly fur is orange with a gray base, and the facial mask is dark but does not stretch back to the ears. Eastern Andes is home to many species that only exist in small, separate areas, a pattern known as endemism. Scientists consider the discovery of Marmosa uh, cacapoya also revises altitudinal altitudinal limits of its group, while its closest relatives have only been found as high as about 5,187 feet or 1,580 meters. This new species was recorded at 8,740 feet or 2,660 meters in the cloud forest of Rio Absio. Wow. Okay, that's pretty unique as well because you can have completely different ecosystems in those altitudes as well, which is probably what's occurring there. I'm not too familiar with the Rio Absio National Park, but um, that is quite interesting. I mean, this animal's found in like nearly 4,000 feet higher than the other possums. Cloud forest bands change quickly with height, and species often swap out along the slope. That patchwork helps explain why short field windows can still turn up animals that science has not yet named. So let's see. The park's legal status limits access, so surveys depend on careful planning and permits that makes each specimen count, especially when populations are small or scattered. That's nuts for these public areas, and like not even the people that are conducting research on the different animals, plants, soils, the climate in general can only be there for a very limited amount of time. This is just ridiculous. I mean, they should have full access to it. Ugh. And then the people that are preventing them from doing so, they have very little knowledge of these different ecosystems, how they work. It's due to these other people. I just find it annoying with different protected areas because it isn't just South America that this occurs with; it's everywhere. So let's see. Um, anything else? So future trips will aim to find more of these animals and figure out exactly where they live between the Marañón and Huallaga rivers. Teams will research at the same heights and similar forests to learn if the species is limited to one small area or spread across more of the cloud forest. And possibly even get a bit of a glimpse into their population. Maybe there's another species in the region or just exactly, what's their specific home range? Are they specialists? Are they really only confined to a certain small area? Or do they have a much larger home range or native range, you could say? This is good. I mean, finally, we've found another species of possum over in South America. I believe South America alone has somewhere between 80 to 110 different species of possum. So, let's move to the next one. Probably having to be concerned with animals like, ocelots or might be a little too far south for jaguarundis, but, definitely ocelots. Okay, moving forward. So from buckrail.com, animal families seen using wildlife crossings in Wilson. So on August 18th, the motion sensor camera captures a mule deer family walking through one of the Snake River Bridge underpasses. So, photo Teton County. So I'm guessing this is probably over in Wyoming since it's stating Teton County. So probably adjacent to Grand Teton National Park. And I believe also Snake River um, runs through not just Idaho, but as well as part of Wyoming, probably. So, oh, yep, there we go. Jackson, Wyoming. On Thursday, September 11th, Teton County, the Wyoming Department of Transportation and the Wyoming Game and Fish Department announced that a variety of animals have been using the new wildlife crossings at the intersection of WY 22 and WY 390 in Wilson. Um, don't actually there have been a wide variety, especially in the past 8 years of different wildlife crossings being built, which is basically a bridge that goes over another highway or freeway or sometimes even just a busy street. So let's see. As part of the Snake River Bridge and Intersection project, the four structures, including one under the new bridge, were completed in July to reduce wildlife vehicle collisions. The tunnels, bridges, and fencing were designed to safely guide animals beneath the highway per Teton County. Or are there more? So this is on June 27th. So these two look healthy. They don't seem to be having like any tick problems or I don't think she seems too thin. It's just summer. Oh, there's a moose that came through here. Okay, sometimes okay, these are underpasses, so they're just simply going underneath the highway. So yeah, you can see his antlers are coming in. June 9th. Wow. Eh, so what was this? Anyway, I'll keep going. 1:35 in the afternoon. Oh, there's a female with a collar and her calf. This is June 7th. This is really good. So he was probably born like that week. That's a pretty young calf. Oh, okay. Since the project's completion, motion sensor cameras have captured images of moose, elk, mule deer, skunks, red foxes, and raccoons using the underpasses. A young bear was also documented using the tunnel system even before construction was completed. Probably a black bear. At least that's my guess. But I mean, there are brown bears within the region, though black bears are probably going to be mainly hanging out in more forested areas. You'll see them out in the open plains, but that's more common for a brown bear to be out in the open. What's especially exciting is that we're not just seeing individual animals, we're seeing family groups, a mother moose and calf, a doe with fawns, which tells us these animals are learning and teaching the next generation where it's safe to cross under the highway. Yeah, they learn quite quickly. I mean, it's like the moment that these any of these animals sense an underpass or an overpass, they take it. So they're quite intelligent. Um, and very sensitive to change. In 2024, Snake River levee ramps constructed on the south and east side of the Wilson Bridge suggested ungulates' preference for using crossing structures. According to Teton County, the Y22 390 intersection was previously one of the highest hotspots for vehicle wildlife collisions in the region, particularly with moose. Colliding with a moose can be catastrophic. They are large animals, and hitting one can easily total a car or cause serious injuries. And, well, yeah, and, uh, these crossings are already helping reduce those risks. Yeah, obviously. The Wildlife Underpasses project was a collaborative effort funded by WYDOT, Teton County, and the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resources Trust. Teton County used funds from a voter-approved specific purpose excise tax for wildlife crossings that was approved in 2019 for $10 million. Um, hmm. Teton County reminds the public to only use the pedestrian underpasses, not the wildlife underpasses. S- Really? Huh. Human presence can deter wildlife from moving through the structures, Teton County wrote via press release. I think eventually they might still use it, but that's interesting. With wildlife activity expected to increase this fall, Teton County urges drivers to remain alert, especially during dawn and dusk hours and near known migration corridors. They're probably saying this due to the rut that has actually just started with moose, mule deer, white-tailed deer, elk within the region, technically everywhere in North America and even over in Europe, Northern Asia. Drivers should be extra alert near the fence ends of Snake River Bridge project at Wenzel Lane and Iron Rock Road on Y22 and Raven Haven Drive on Y390. Teton County has identified additional high priority sites for future wildlife crossing projects. The full list of proposed locations can be seen here. And that's it. Okay, well, it's really good to see that we have mule deer, moose coming through, and what they said, skunks and red foxes as well. So this is definitely having a huge benefit. I wouldn't doubt possibly you have even certain small pronghorn herds moving through. So guess we can go over to the next one. Okay, so moving forward. So from phys.org. Tiny prairie dwellers outshine bison in keeping soil and plant nutrient cycling. So a new thing came out on this. This isn't exactly new, but maybe more info is found on it. So let's see. Do- okay, a new study published in Ecology, scientists from the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute found that yeah, it's annoying when it occurs. Oh no, yeah, that I actually didn't expect. found that in prairie grasslands, the smallest herbivores, namely prairie dogs and grasshoppers, increased rates of nutrient cycling to a greater degree than larger herbivores such as bison and cattle. Grasslands cover 25 to 40% of the earth on 40% of the land on Earth. Well, if you're talking about native grasslands, they did. Now they're much fewer in number, but yes, technically this would be true for historically.
What's the difference?
So if you're looking at places like North America, for example, especially over in different parts of the Great Plains, even the Midwest, which technically a portion of the Midwest was the Great Plains. You had it where you had a wide variety of different prairie grasses, prairie flowers, and that's where you would have seen like the different, bison, elk herds in the region, even different populations like wolves and grizzly bears. And then it got converted to what I guess cotton fields to an extent, corn, and then for cows, it was changed into like Bermuda and then Johnson fields. Really, if you're like further south in like certain parts of Texas, I'm not sure the precise exotic plants that, they plant for cattle in those states, but the problem is that when that occurs, it changes the chemistry of the soil, so now it doesn't absorb water the same way, it doesn't retain nutrients the same way, and even the plants in those areas from different parts of the world, you can even have it where just simply different parts of the country or the continent have a different impact on, like, when it comes to filtering the water that comes through, or like, sometimes these plants hold on to so little water that much of it just runs off, and that's how you have it where in many of these places, there's a lot of erosion that occurs, and the prairie grasses, in some regions, the root systems, the shortest, the shortest roots of certain species of prairie grass would extend to over 2 feet, the shortest. You have it where there's also you have to take into account not just, like, the different croplands, the pastures, but even when you look at certain or let me phrase that, all suburban neighborhoods that have, like, sod, many of these species of grasses that are put in for sod, their root system is like what, a few inches, maybe? Sometimes they're a bit longer, but they don't obtain the amount of water. Like all these different grasses would soak up the water like a sponge, or that's why you wouldn't have a lot of flooding in many of these areas. That way, you would still have flooding in certain other regions that are the plants that evolved in these other areas, like adjacent to marshes or wetlands, they're designed to kind of have like still stagnant water. Whereas in these other areas, it would all immediately just be soaked into the soil. Certain prairie grass species have root systems that extend over 7 feet. So um, that's how, like in those areas, it's just now it floods, it didn't before. And yeah, the soil chemistry was much different. Okay, so, okay, let's see. Okay, so in the interest of identifying how these herbivores shape grassland ecosystems, researchers examined the contributions of prairie dogs, grasshoppers, bison, and cattle on grass and soil nutrition across 15 shortgrass prairie sites in northeastern Montana. An area of active research representing a collage of conservation, ranching, agricultural landscapes. By the way, like, I know it sounded like I was attacking, like, agriculture in general. I do um, you do need to farm, but it's just that, the problem is it just when it comes to, like, a certain just way of farming, it comes to a point where it's not really beneficial on, either end when it comes to especially, like, these plants, causing, like, the whole area to flood or, like, per se, overgrazing. You can rotate, and you're actually benefiting the ecosystem, just constant moving of the animals. Anyway, herbivores contribute to the green food web by turning plant tissues into urine and dung that provide new plant growth with readily available nutrients. This cycles nutrients at a faster rate than the brown food web, where plant tissues slowly um, senesce and degrade before nutrients become available for uptake by future plants.
Now, is this similar to what you were telling me about all of the, oak trees in the area?
Oh, yeah. Well, in some areas also used to be some native grassland. Now it's overrun by trees, and the problem is when many people, um, when they think of restoring the habitat anywhere, they think plant a tree, any tree, and in many cases, that doesn't work. Even in some areas where planting certain trees would help. First of all, it depends on what type of ecosystem you're referring to or what it was like 200 years prior. You can still restore like these certain areas in North America that have been technically ruined for somewhere between 300 to 400 years. I'd say that's not very common, but because like there would still be like all these seeds, like say from the prairie grasses, they would still be usable. They would be able to germinate after like let's say all of the trees in the area have been excavated. But the problem is that, like what I was talking about with those other exotic plants, there are these areas that from certain cut down forests saplings occurred from these other trees and then just overtook the area because also partially due to like a lack of fire that used to occur that would help keep the trees out. I'd say the bison probably have a bit less of an impact on keeping the trees out than what some like to claim. Also, well, I wouldn't really compare the bison to the elephants because there's a lot of like elephants tend to be um, put out as like a sort of acacia, not buffer. Would it be that be the right term? Where they kind of keep the acacia trees at bay from overtaking the grassland, except many of these areas where like you see elephants pushing over acacia trees is naturally like an open acacia woodland. So that's a misused description of the elephant's role. Bison, you could say, might be a bit closer, but there's still, a lot of areas, especially if you look at bison in Yellowstone, different parts of Utah where they're inhabiting. There's a lot of trees in the area, so it's more of the fires that would have occurred very frequently, like every 2 years in certain areas over in these native prairie ecosystems. But where's it getting with that? I think I lost track. I was talking about earlier with like planting a tree. Um, if you look at certain cities where it used to be, a massive prairie, like if you look at the Gulf Coast, for instance, southeastern United States, there were a lot of these regions where it's just native prairie grassland. And the problem is it's been replaced with cypress trees, pine trees, and a massive amount of oaks. And these trees, even like the large ones, let's say they're also in close proximity to each other, they don't provide anywhere near the same absorption of water that just that same area of grass, native grasses would have. So, it's you have to check, like, what ecoregion that is and the native plants that there were. Like, if you're over in Northern California is adjacent to Southern California, you're not going to be planting the same trees, shrubs, grasses. You're not going to even find some cases the same species. Like, let's say you wanted to help reintroduce certain animals, you're not going to find the same certain species of insects or even amphibians in some regions. So you have to be careful. Even like you could be in an ecoregion adjacent to another that's let's say amphibian, like a frog or a toad was native to, but it's not in that other one. That's how careful you have to be. So, let's keep going. Of all the herbivores studied, researchers found prairie dogs contributed the greatest benefit to the nutrient availability on the prairie. Prairie dog towns had the greatest levels of carbon and nitrogen in the soil, concentrations that increased with the greater presence of the smallest of the studied herbivores, grasshoppers. Yeah, I forget sometimes that these guys play a role. Like you understand the insects are important, but the prairie dog pops up and then you kind of just push them away in your mind. And then it's when you have to bring everything together and the grasshopper is pretty essential because usually when people think of the grasshoppers, it's just like food for raccoons and even the prairie dogs themselves. You're like, I haven't had any protein in a while. So munch on hopper. But you saw Bug's Life. The prairie dogs also increase local nitrogen, potassium, and magnesium in grass tissue, likely through their excretions and by burrowing, which helped incorporate the nutrients into the soil. Additionally, grasshoppers increased phosphorus in the soil. The researchers also found grasshoppers are likely responsible for the characteristic peak in plant biomass during midsummer on the prairie, before it drops off in the late growing season. The seasonal life cycle of grasshoppers, with small nymphs hatching in the spring, growing to large hungry adults in the late summer and fall, is likely what causes these declines in plant biomass at the end of the growing season. In contrast to grasshoppers, the large herbivores studied, cattle and bison consumed relatively constant levels of plant biomass across the summer. Oh, yeah, him, Fred. Yeah, well, this is probably over with someplace of South Dakota or Kansas. There's a few different subspecies of prairie dogs within North America, specifically within the United States. And I believe the one with like the largest home range is the black-tailed prairie dog. So you can find them in different parts of Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma. Let's see, like Nebraska, South Dakota. Oh, okay. This guy is not sure what he's been stuffing himself with. Okay, this study shows that there are many different interactions occurring between herbivores and the greater grassland ecosystem. While the presence of some smaller herbivores, such as prairie dogs and grasshoppers, may not be as obvious, the impact they have on grassland ecology is considerable. The study points to the need to conserve and restore not just the larger grazers, but also the small, unsung heroes of prairie dogs and grasshoppers to maintain nutrient cycling and fully functioning grassland ecosystems. So I think this might be a bit new with the grasshoppers having a major impact. Not so much the prairie dogs. That's not a new thing, but it is good that I'm glad that they included them with the grasshoppers because it made it a lot more interesting. A grasshopper by himself, it's hard to just keep him aloft. Um, so I guess we can go on to the next one. Now, I also was only mentioning, like, restoring grassland ecosystems. There are certain areas where when it comes to forest, um, that of course, need restoration, but some are, like, open woodland or some more closed woodland, depends on where you are. Okay, but anyway, from goodnewsnetwork.com, researchers blown away after finding jaguar population up 30% across Mexico. I'm guessing this is probably based on certain protected areas, but it's really hard to tell over all of Mexico. Let's see where they found them. So, a jaguar on the Pikery River. Yeah, you can find jaguars as far north as like different parts of southern New Mexico, Arizona, um, but they're like occasional individuals. So, imagine sitting in southern Texas and knowing that in less than a day you could drive to see the world's third largest cat. That is absolutely the reality in Mexico today, following a second national jaguar population census, which found this charismatic cat is actually increasing in numbers across the country, reaching about 5,300 animals. Really? I thought there were more. Am I thinking of cougars? I thought there were many more over in Mexico, but then you have to remember how many people are in Mexico and the available habitat. So that could probably
Texas
be.
has more cats than that.
Well, we're referring to cougars, but yeah. Anyway, Gerardo Caballos and colleagues conducted the first census in 2010, hoping to grasp more or less the gravity of the risk of extinction faced by the jaguar. They were estimating they'd find around 1,000 in the whole of Mexico. Rather than the risk of extinction, their results conveyed a different narrative. They found 4 times as many cats as they expected. It was a great surprise, terrific news. Obviously, 4,000 means the new species is still in danger of extinction. But 4,000 is a lot better than 1,000. Yeah. if they already have a lot of genetic variety. Always have to take that into account. Then in 2025, Cavalos completed a second survey employing over 50 national and local research institutions and community leaders. Wow. Who together set up 920 motion activated camera traps. Guessing these are also in the different national parks or animal reserves in the area. Oh, we're talking about a large region. Staggered again, the count showed that in 15 years, jaguar numbers had increased 30%. That's good. Question is this everywhere in Mexico, like in different areas? It turns out that even though the 20 saw hundreds of thousands of acres of forest cleared, what? Ugh, sorry. No, not sorry. That's shocking. There were almost as many jaguars in Mexico as there are cheetahs on the entire African continent. Yeah, but jaguars, here's the thing, you can't compare the 2 because, cheetahs have been, like, slowly, like, increasing in population, but, they also had, like, a massive decrease, but anyway, the the population increase that the jaguars have had is, like, just skyrocketing in that, short amount of time is where the cheetahs, let's just say they really haven't changed in the past 15, 20 years. Although, like with what we've seen with different animals in Africa, I don't think we've had, much of a census with the cheetahs recently, like a population survey, so we don't really know, but cheetahs also don't have a lot of genetic variety, so I wouldn't really compare cheetahs with any other population of mammal because of that problem. They've also been like that though for 11,000 years for some reason. Like they dwindled massively to a handful of individuals at the end of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age, yet rebounded after that. It's possible these jaguars actually have genetic variety, but they've also skyrocketed. And it's interesting due to, I guess, a lower amount of poaching as well. Maybe better secured, protected areas, unlike in different areas of Africa. And jaguars don't have to worry about lions, hyenas, leopards, black mambas, puff outers. Those are 2 different venomous snakes.
How many cubs do they have at once?
Oh, jaguars? At least 2 or 3. Um, Where cheetahs can have somewhere of like around 7. I lose most of them. Um, so the jaguar really doesn't have the same amount of obstacles. I mean, it's technically the top predator in these areas. Doesn't really worry about cougars. The wolves are extinct in the region. Black bears are okay. They might be like their biggest problem, but even then, that's rare for the black bear jaguar occurrences. Maybe in northern Mexico. The grizzly bear is gone in the northern regions. Mexico did used to have grizzly bears. I think it last one extinct in the 1920s or 30s. I keep trying to claim that there's 1 or 2 still roaming around, but, let's see. Anyway, let's keep going. So, the fact that the country has managed to maintain increased population over the last 14 years is extraordinary. For me, it's great news for the country. Mexico and the world needs good news. The population came in as follows. The Yucatan Peninsula region had the most, 1,699, followed by the South Pacific area, 1,541. Northeast and Central Mexico, 813. The North Pacific, 733. And the Central Pacific, 540. These are decent population counts. But here's the thing. Like I'm saying, this is probably, guessing that this was based off of a certain amount they saw in these different reserves, and maybe a guess as to how the rest of the ecosystem is intact, and then maybe how many other jaguar sightings there have been, and then there's a guess. So they probably didn't see all of these individuals. So that's why, animal estimation is pretty complicated, even with like especially animals such as polar bears, they're even harder. The Well, okay, these guys are hidden in a forest to a certain extent. I'm just saying because polar bears, especially on the ice, they're constantly on the move, whereas they're just, resting on land, getting through the summer and part of the fall. They're a lot easier because they're just sleeping. Partially. The jaguar is a okay, we know this. Oh, that's it. Okay. Well, hope you enjoy this live stream. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you love talking about animals, and share the show with everyone you know.